Hey, what's up, ink family? In this episode, I'm gonna be teaching you the drop method to get your black and gray shading to the next level. Let's do this. Okay, so this video is geared towards teaching you the fundamentals about black and gray shading, where to start, the different shades and the different values of your black. This should be the foundation of where you start your black and gray shading. And later on in another video, I'll show you the advanced version or how you can sort of iterate this to turn it to your own way as you start to get used to this version. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So first, we're gonna need to set up our ink caps. We're gonna be setting up a row of 10 and a row of 5, and I'll show you why in just a bit. All right, so I'm gonna illustrate the drop method with these 10 above the 5 ink caps that we have here. This is just for illustration. I don't think you actually need 10. If you feel like it helps, you can definitely set up 10 ink caps and go from there. But ideally, you want to probably stay with something that's a little bit easier, more convenient, and not so much of a hassle to set up, because I do believe in your setup being very simple. So that way you're not complicating things. Something that's been a huge help for me is not making the process even more complicated, because then I could just focus on the piece and just work on the piece. So let's start off. So one thing is always going to be for certain. One of these ink caps on either the right side or the left side. Some people prefer, righty. They're right-handed or left-handed. I prefer on the left side. Just a shake. Prefer on the left side having a full ink cap. That's how it's always going to be. The ones on either side, it doesn't matter. But one of them is definitely gonna always be filled with black. And one of them on the very edge is not gonna have anything. Now, I learned a method originally where it was, you always do one drop at the very end. I disagree with that. I think you can do a 0 drop or completely 0 and do all water at the end. And this way you can go from 100%, that's the theory, right? That you would think of this as 100% black, and this as 0%. 100%, 0%, right? And then we'll go from there. So then we're gonna do, this is number 5, so we're gonna fill it halfway. It's about halfway up. And this is our middle one here, so we're gonna fill this one up about halfway. Okay, those are filled up about halfway. A little hard to see from this angle, but now you can see how you got 100%, 50%, 0%, and the same deal on this side, 100%, 50%, 0%, right? And then we just fill up the rest with water. That's how you get the 50-50. And now we're gonna fill these up accordingly, right? So this is gonna have a couple drops in it, more, all the way to 100%. Okay, so now you can see that this one and this one are very similar, and that this one and this one are very similar, right? Well, actually, it's more like this one right here. And now we're gonna fill up the rest with water. Okay. And that's the drop system. It's fairly easy. I don't think you need to go all the way to this level, but I do think you should try it at least once to get an idea, to get a feel for it. So that way you can figure out what's gonna work best for you. I know some people do 7 ink caps, some people do 5. So yes, I'm gonna show you here on this napkin what it would be like if you were tattooing and dipping back and forth, right? So let's say you started a tattoo, you're about to start the tattoo, you did a little bit of lining, or you did blood lining or very faint. It's recommended that you start on the softer side and work your way down to the darker fades all the way to 100%. That's where you want to start. Trust me when I say that is the foundation. The theory is, or the saying in tattooing is, you can always add black, you can never take it away, right? So you want to start soft and work your way into the darker fades. So then you would dip in here, and now you have a very light fade. If you look at it, that's pretty light. Versus if you were to dip on this side, you see that's a lot darker than this, right? And obviously dipping in the middle, you get something that's more in the middle. As you can see on this, looks a lot lighter, a little darker, and a lot darker, right? And so that's the theory. You're gonna be dipping back and forth between these to achieve a shade that is between these two, and so on and so forth. If you wanted to achieve a shade that was between your 50% and just a little bit lower, something like, 46%, 47%, then you would dip between 50 and this 40 right here. If you wanted to get a 55, you would dip between your 60 and your 50, right? If you think of it in percentages, so on and so forth. It gets a little bit more complicated when you go down to 5 ink caps or less. Being able to dip between 0 and your lightest black to achieve the shade that you're trying to accomplish. Whereas you could probably dip between these 4 right here, whereas now you're dipping between just these 3. And then same on this side, if you're trying to get your a little bit darker value but not fully black, you're gonna have to find that between these 3 ink caps versus finding it in these 4 here, right? And that's sort of the rub. But that comes with practice. As you practice more, you'll start to feel more confident dipping between back and forth on these different shades. And later on, you actually start to feel a little bit more comfortable with maybe starting off with a middle black instead of starting off with your light fades. I remember early on in my tattoo career, I started, when I learned the drop method, obviously, after I learned the drop method, I started shading first. Once I started my shading after my lighting, I would start with the lighter shades, go to my mid-tones, and then go all the way down to the blacks. Later on down my career, I would say at about the 5-year mark, I was starting in my mid-tones and then dropping in some heavy blacks and then going back and forth finding my lighter shades where I needed them. I just started to feel a little bit more comfortable with that. I'm not gonna get into how I'm doing it now. If you wanna know more about how I'm doing it now, check out my next video on advanced black and gray shading. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, drop a comment. But yeah, this is the drop method. If you're gonna wanna get better at your black and gray shading, trust me when I say you're gonna wanna learn the fundamentals, the foundation of black and gray shading. It is the drop method. There is plenty of videos to check out online where they go a little bit more in depth than I did today. But this is how you start. This is for you beginning artists out there who are trying to figure out how to get their softer shades next to their dark and their really blacks. And then also for artists who are, been doing it a little bit longer, who are starting to make a career out of it, how you can, refine your method a little bit, or maybe try something different that you haven't been trying that might actually help. I do believe in, trying different things to find your own version of it. I'm not gonna say that this is the way you should learn it, but this is fundamental to black and gray shading. Understanding this is gonna help you create your own version, is what I'm trying to say. So I hope this video helped out a lot. Like I said, if you wanna know how I'm actually doing my black and gray shading, how I achieve the really high contrast look with soft tones next to it, there's a combination of the types of inks that I use, up to 3 different bottles, the shading method, my hand movement, my hand speed. I did do a video on the theory of black and gray shading and just showing you how I do black and gray, but it goes a lot more in depth than that. So be on the lookout for my next video. All right, guys, that's it for this one. Take care.